Welcome to House of Ham. I'm Bob WV7W, and this is the first in a series of deep dive videos into how to use the KH1. You can think of this as a video supplement to the manual. So let's dig in up next. This video is going to cover the basics of the KH1. There are chapter markers for each section, so you can easily go to the area that interests you. Let's get started. Let's start with how to remove and install the battery. First thing you want to do is remove the whip from the radio if it's on there. Then turn the radio over, and the little clip at the bottom, pull that and lift the tote cover open. Next, you want to pull on the plastic tab for the battery, but make sure you hold onto the charger board so you don't put any stress on it. And then pull the battery out. To install the battery, it's just the reverse. Put the battery in and route the cable as shown. Hold the board and push the cable back into the connector. At the bottom, you'll notice there's a hex key and a nut. The hex key is for adjusting the paddles. The nut is an extra nut for the counterpoise. The logging tray can be installed on either side of the radio to account for both right and left-handed operators. The installation is simple. The way that I do it is lean the tray slightly towards the back of the radio and insert the bottom part of the tabs into the slot. Then press down on the top of each tab as you're pushing it in. I do one of them and then the other. To remove the tray is just the opposite. To use the whip, remove it from the clips and screw it onto the mounting post at the top of the radio. To extend the whip, carefully pull each segment out until the whip is fully extended. To collapse the whip, start with the fattest section first, and you'll work your way to the skinniest. Be careful, as these whips can be somewhat fragile. The counterpoise easily attaches to the binding post between the switch and the BNC connector. A counterpoise is critical for successful operation with the whip antenna. Do not try and operate without a counterpoise. Even though the tuner may give an acceptable SWR, the radio will not be very effective. In fact, according to the manual, you can expect the received signal to be down between 20 to 30 dB compared to using a 13-foot counterpoise. The band switch is between the counterpoise post and the whip post. If you're operating on 20 meters, move the switch towards the front of the radio. This will engage the internal 20-meter loading coil. To use 17 or 15 meters, move the switch towards the back of the radio. This will engage the 17 and 15-meter loading coil. It's important to note that the whip is not resonant on either band, and the tuner is needed to get a decent match. The BNC connector allows you to use other antenna systems, like end feds or dipoles. It is important to note that the BNC is always attached to the radio output, so if you're using the whip, you'll want to remove anything from the BNC connector. The internal antenna tuner also works with the antennas attached to the BNC connector, so you can use non-resonant antennas such as a random wire antenna. On the left side of the radio is the external power and charging connector, as well as the power switch. To turn on the radio, slide the power switch towards the front of the radio. The LED to the right of the external power connector will glow green. To charge the battery, plug the external power plug into the power connector. The power LED will glow orange if the radio is on and the battery is charging. It will glow red if the battery is charging and the radio is off. The LED will extinguish if the radio is off and the battery is fully charged. To fully charge the battery, it is advised to supply around 14 volts, such as a typical 13.8 volts from an external supply. Although you can still charge with as little as 12 volts, but it will not charge as quickly and possibly not fully. On the bottom of the radio are two knobs. On the left is the volume knob, and on the right is the VFO knob. These two knobs also perform other functions depending on the menu or operational mode you are in. More on these knobs as we delve into the menus. Between the two knobs is a key and data jack. This can be used with the KH1 paddle or any external key or paddle. It can also be used with the included USB data cable. If you're going to use the data cable, it is important to switch the jack to the data setting in the menu. More on that later. To use the KH1 paddle, pull the paddle partway out and rotate it 180 degrees and plug it back in. Now let's take a quick look at the display. We'll start with the top line. Starting on the left is the VFO frequency. In the middle is the mode. A C denotes CW. The other two modes are for listening to single sideband and transmitting on CW. Listening to lower sideband will show an L, and upper sideband will show a U. Finally, on the right is the receive incremental tuning or RIT offset. The radio can also do transmit incremental tuning, and we'll get into how to do that in the menu section. On the bottom line, first we have the S meter, which shows a numeric display of the receive signal strength. Next to that is the attenuator icons, if they are activated. The skinny resistor shows a 10 dB attenuation, and the fat one shows a 30 dB attenuation. No icon shows no attenuation. Next to that is the filter width. And next to that is the ATU status icon, and then the battery status icon. Finally, there is the real-time clock. The last thing is the buttons. We'll not go over the function of these here as we'll get into them in the menus section. Each button has a short press function shown in white above the button and a long press function shown in yellow below the button. You'll also notice that the AF and VFO knobs also have short and long press functions. The VFO knob is used to tune the radio to a particular frequency. Tapping the knob switches between 10 Hz and 100 Hz tuning. This is easily identified by the number of digits after the decimal. Long pressing the knob will change to 1 kHz tuning. To get out of 1 kHz, just tap the VFO knob again. The left knob normally controls the volume from the speaker or the headphones. Tapping this knob will allow you to set the side tone frequency and the pitch. The volume for both the received audio and the side tone are independent. It is good to know that these are also independent if you're using the speaker or the headphones. This is actually a very nice feature since you will likely need the volume to be up higher if you're using the speaker, and you won't blast your ears if you plug in headphones. Short pressing the buttons do the following functions. The 1 and 2 buttons adjust the keyer speed down and up. Each press changes the words per minute by 2. Now I wish it were in increments of 1, and maybe that will get incorporated into a future firmware release. The 3 button activates a tune cycle on the automatic antenna tuner. The 4 button takes you into the CW message page. Now there are actually 6 CW message memories, although when you first come into this menu, the top line will likely show M1 through M3. The X over button 4 will take you out of the menu. Pressing buttons 1 through 3 will play the message recorded into that slot once. Long pressing one of these buttons will cause that message to be repeated at an interval set in the message repeat menu item. The default is for 5 seconds. Long pressing the 4 button will take you to the record page. Short pressing any of the 3 buttons will start a recording of a message. You record your message by using the paddle, and you stop the recording by pressing any button. Long pressing one of these 3 buttons will clear that memory. Long pressing the 4 button will change from group 1 through 3 to group 4 through 6, and vice versa. To exit the menu, short press the 4 button. Long pressing the 1 button will take you to the receiver page. Short pressing buttons 1 through 3 will set the filter width. Button 1 is 300 Hz, button 2 is 500 Hz, and button 3 is 2 kHz. Long pressing of the buttons will set the attenuator. Button 1 is no attenuation, button 2 is minus 10 dB, and button 3 is minus 30 dB. Long pressing button 4 will activate the RIT feature. When RIT is engaged, an R will appear next to the RIT offset. Long pressing the 2 button will take you to the Programmable Functions and Transmitter page. Notice that the top line shows ATM, log, and DSP on my display. One of the great things they did with the KH1 is provided a descriptive tag for each of the possible functions that can be performed. On the KX2, you had to remember what each button did. As this one is configured, short pressing the 1 button will change the ATU mode between auto and bypass. Button 2 will turn the logging feature on or off. And button 3 will change the display mode between normal operating and voltage, current, and temperature. These 3 programmable functions can be set in the menu. Long pressing button 1 will put the radio into low power tune. This will transmit so you could adjust an external antenna tuner. Long pressing button 2 will change the power output between high power and low power. And long pressing button 3 will put the keyer into test mode. This is great for practicing with the paddle without transmitting. Long pressing the 4 button will turn on the XIT and put an X next to the offset digits on the display. Long pressing the 3 button will take you into the band and mode page. Short pressing the 1 button will take you to a lower band, and the 2 button will take you to a higher band. Short pressing the 3 button will switch between the VFO and the scratch pad memory. Long pressing the 1 and 2 buttons will switch between CW and the single sideband cross mode operations. Long pressing the 3 button will transfer the current VFO settings into the scratch pad memory. Long pressing the 4 button locks or unlocks the VFO. This can be really handy if you're walking around while operating. In this section, I will go over the configuration menu items. Many of these menu items are in what I call the danger zone. What I mean by this is if you monkey with these settings, you could cause your radio to not work well. For these items, I will mention it, but I will also put up this warning icon. If you mess around with these settings, you do so at your own peril. To get into the menu functions, long press the 4 button. When you first turn on the radio, this will take you to the display mode menu. After you've been in the menu, this will take you to the last menu item you visited. The menu items are in alphabetical order. To change the menu items, use the AF or left knob, and then the VFO knob changes the menu values. I'll start at the beginning with the AGC voltage. Right off the bat, I would not mess with this unless you know what you are doing. At the very least, write down the current setting so you can always get back to where it was from the factory. Next is the beat frequency oscillator adjustment. Here again, if you don't know what you're doing, don't mess with it. One note from the manual is if you change the side tone pitch, they suggest you perform a BFO alignment, and there are instructions in the manual on how to do that. The power amplifier bias, again, this is in the danger zone, along with the next menu item, the bandpass filter adjustment. The data adjustment. This is normally not visible, so you really only need this if you're using the logging feature. To adjust the date, long press the 4 button to unlock this item. Button 2 selects the month. Button 3 selects the day. And button 4 selects the year. The VFO knob changes the value. The 1 button exits the menu and saves the changes. The next item is the oscillator ID. There should be no reason to change this item, so I would leave it alone. The next item adjusts the low and high power settings. If you decide to do this, make sure you follow the instructions in the manual. The synthesizer reference frequency adjustment is another I would leave alone unless you know what you're doing. The real-time clock adjustment will compensate for a clock that is running too fast or too slow. To use this, set the time with a known standard and check it in a day or two and see how many seconds it is off. Then adjust for an equal but opposite amount. If you check it for 2 days, then divide the difference by 2. The S meter and SWR meter are again things that you should probably not mess with. There is a procedure for both in the manual. Adjusting the time is just like the date. The 2 buttons sets the hour, 3 button sets the minute, and the 4 button sets the seconds. The watt meter adjustment allows you to adjust the meter compared to a known, accurate external meter. And there's good instructions in the manual on how to do this. The ATU mode switches between auto and bypass of the internal antenna tuner. The ATU parameters allow you to tweak the inductance and capacitance of the internal tuner. As the manual states, it is unlikely that you'll be able to get a better result over what the ATU does. The display mode switches the bottom line between the standard and voltage, current, and temperature. The EE init menu allows you to reinitialize the operational or all parameters. If you're going to do this, please see the warnings in the manual before doing so, particularly if you're going to do a full, as it will reset the factory calibration settings. The firmware menu item is a view-only item that will show you the current firmware version installed on the radio. The iambic mode changes between iambic A and B. The default is A, and it's a little more forgiving than B on Elecraft radios. I would try them both and see which works better for you. The key jack menu switches between normal, reversed, straight, and RS-232, which is used with the programming cable. The key weight adjustment adjusts the ratio between dot and dash. The default is 1.25. The logging menu switches between off and on, view, erase, and send to PC. And the manual does a great job of explaining this in detail. Message repeat sets the number of seconds between repeated CW message repeats. The default is 5 seconds. The pan mode turns the mini pan on or off. The pan span sets the frequency range of the scan, and the pan threshold sets the detection threshold for both mini pan and CW text decode. The programmable functions are very easy to set. Select which PFN you want to change, and then select the function with the VFO knob. The RIT clear clears out any RIT or XIT offsets. The serial number is also view only and shows you the serial number for your radio. The switch tones turn on or off the tone when you press a button. I prefer to have mine off. I find the beeps annoying. The text decode switches between off, transmit only, and both transmit and receive. The battery voltage menu shows the battery voltage on the top line, and the bottom line is supposed to show the number of amp hours used. Mine shows TBD, but I believe that this is a yet to be implemented in firmware, so hopefully we'll see that soon. And finally, the VFO fast sets the VFO step for when one digit is showing behind the decimal. It can go between 100 Hz and 500 Hz. This covers the basic stuff from the KH1 manual. There are more in-depth things that I may dive into in the future. If you have ideas for maybe some other advanced things that you would like to see a video on, leave me a comment below. Until next time, 73.